Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than you good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 6th, 2020, Guando Deportes. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it is wet down here. It's been raining for the last 24 hours. I don't think anybody in California stopped crying since Sunday, so it's all been flowing downhill to the south.
Yeah, I heard John Lynch on the I was listening to John Lynch talk today, and he was saying how it's a process. We're all going to get better, and that's how he believes, and I believe he actually might be right, Big C. I want to say Big C Sports is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe, and really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. I want to make sure that we give out our national suicide hotline. It's for military veterans, Big C. A lot of people call it the Veteran Crisis Hotline. You can get some help. You call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veterancrisisline.net, and hopefully get some help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, we're lost in a country that's built on celebration and glorifying wins. But we have to also glorify the wins that our great veterans had when they were fighting in battles to protect the sovereignty of our nation. But in a lot of those wins, Charlton, they came at great sacrifice.
Yep.
And many of those sacrifices have been mental and physical on those great veterans. And when they return back home, they're not always in one piece mentally or physically. And that causes great suffering and hardship on many of those war veterans, Charlton. And we have to find a way to stem suicide, that so many of them have fallen into that horrific disease, some 19 a day in America. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is one of those there to hopefully stem the tide and have someone for these people to talk to have a shoulder and a voice to lean on, someone who can care and not be judgmental. So any way we can find a way to get some help from the National Suicide Prevention Hotline for these great veterans and many other Americans, Charlton, is a great service by any American.
By any American. You can call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veterancrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and get some help. Big C, I love so much of what we do about celebrating, whether it's a sports game or even celebrating a way to throw out a lifeline to people going through issues and trying to get help. But I want to make sure that I don't ignore the fact that POTUS, that he announced that he was acquitted by his own party, Big C, but he used a lot of F-bombs and expletives as he was celebrating his own pardon by his good old boy club. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the overall service has gone to an all-time low as far as representation of American citizens. I don't think that the party fact checks the president in as far as the things that he says and the things that he does. And a lot of people use his negative rhetoric for inspiration.
Yeah.
But when you're supposed to be bringing a country together, you're constantly dividing a country. And all you have to look at is the contriteness of President Bill Clinton in 1999 when he delivered a speech after his acquittal. Is that he was sincere and genuine about it, Charlton, versus the rhetoric we receive today.
Yeah, you got to drop a lot of, sometimes you got to wash your mouth out with soap. That's what my teacher told me when I was a young boy. But sometimes you can do what you want to do in this country. Everybody has an opinion. I also want to acknowledge, as far as commerce goes, Big C Sports launching a real estate TV channel spring of 2020. The goal is to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their properties on TV. And I know that everybody has a way of doing things. I remember when I started out in business, Big C, whether it's selling TV or selling radio, it was about going door to door, knocking on someone's door and having them take a look at your product. People oftentimes would sell real estate the same way, going door to door. Do you know of anyone thinking of buying or selling properties? If you can tell a person considering buying or selling a property that we can list your property on television, that makes the agent a superstar, but it also creates more exposure for that listing property. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, electronic modems, Charlton, have been the wave for the past decade as far as getting information out there, starting with radio to television, now the internet, and what we have through podcasts.
Yeah.
Everyone has an open window these days.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that, and I'm letting every broker know. Big C Sports also doing a real estate show. We're on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Those opportunities are coming in the spring of 2020. So I told you today, not only did I hear John Lynch talk about how they're going to go forward, Big C, and there is talk about, are you going to keep Shanahan? Of course he is. What about Jimmy Garoppolo? He says he likes Jimmy Garoppolo. Everybody goes through something. And as you know, you played on championship teams. Money determines if you're going to keep people, not because you like them. That make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the beat up on Jimmy Garoppolo has come from so many different directions, Charlton. Everybody wants to jump on the guy who has just lost and praise the guy who has just won.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Garoppolo was able to take the San Francisco 49ers to a 13-3 regular season record, 2 playoff wins prior to losing the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, there's 30 quarterbacks that were sitting at home on Super Bowl Sunday who would have loved to have the opportunity to be in the position that Jimmy G was in. And a matter of fact, on 15 different occasions, he beat opposing NFL quarterbacks. And out of all of that, Charlton, he had 4 losses in those tries.
Yeah.
So when you think about this, you win 15 games on a season and in the postseason, and you have a total of 4 losses.
Yeah.
And everybody only wants to remember that last loss you had, saying that you're not a capable NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in the same position that the kid Deshaun Watson was from Houston.
Yeah.
No one is saying that Houston should move off of Deshaun Watson and let him go. No one was saying that Tennessee should have moved off of Ryan Tannehill and let him go because they all lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. But by losing on the biggest stage on Sunday,
yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo has been villainized for his loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was a team effort because the last time I checked, he wasn't playing defense against Patrick Mahomes. He was just playing offense. So, I mean, when you think about the defensive backs who gave up the big pass plays as well as the linebackers to the receivers of the Kansas City Chiefs, no one is saying that in the media that the 49ers should move on beyond them, Charlton, because of what they did. And then look at what Jared Goff did last year in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
He scored 3 points, and he was rewarded as a hero and given $105 million guaranteed by the Rams.
Yeah, so Jimmy G he's not dumb. He realized Matt Ryan lost the Super Bowl, got $155 million, and Jared Goff lost the Super Bowl. I think he got $114 plus million, give or take a few $1 million. So maybe, but Jimmy G got his money early. I just think what I really like about what Lynch said earlier when I was listening to him talk is the fact that you got to look at the people on your team. And this is including media, everybody. Everybody's Monday morning quarterback, and nobody has ever lost a game as a Monday morning media quarterback, Big C. But he did say something that I think will hold the 49ers together. And he said, as long as we focus on the guys in that locker room and stay focused, the late Al Davis used to always talk about stay focused. I remember one time standing next to Al Davis, and he was talking to Ronnie Lott. He said, stay focused. Now, Ronnie is a Hall of Famer, of course, but these guys, they know something. They just got to shut out the noise and focus on what got them there. Yeah, Jimmy G had a bad game in the fourth quarter. Some people get tight. The speaker tightens up, but it's not all his fault. But he's the one that's going to get blamed for it. And when you can make the most money on the team, I can understand that. So but before we get into what I want to ask you, Lynch knows what he's talking about. He played for the world champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time. He also played for the Broncos at times, too. So he's been around as a GM now. He's been around some GMs over the years. He's also been around some good coaching, Big C. And more importantly, he's been in the huddle with the guys that make a difference on your team, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you go back to that Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl championship team when they played against the then Oakland Raiders at that time, and I believe it was Rich Gannon who threw 5 interceptions in that game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I didn't hear the cry in the Bay Area media saying that the Raiders need to move on beyond Rich Gannon because of the 5 interceptions he threw, and that was more of a choke job than what Jimmy G did. They were saying that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a great defense and figured it out because John Gruden had been with the team the year before. So when you look at the plight of a quarterback in this day and age of the NFL, the media can be fickle. You know, they loving you when you're having a great time, and if you have a bad day, they're ostracizing you and trying to get rid of you.
Yeah, it's just like a dog. If you feed that dog love you. It'll lick you on the face, kiss you on the lips, Big C. Don't feed that dog a couple of days, it won't even come home, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, here's John Lynch. He's the guy who brought Jimmy Garoppolo to San Francisco. He is the guy who gave Jimmy Garoppolo the huge contract. He is the guy who believes in Jimmy Garoppolo. Everybody else thoughts is just like what the president say. Bad words.
It's just bad words. Blippity blip words, Big C. A lot of good old boys. It's about who's on your team. So with that said, of course you're going to advocate for the guy that you brought in and convince the York family to sign $130+ million. You got to say, hey, I made the right choice. I understand that. However, if you think about the NFL, is the Super Bowl hangover, is it real, or is it what POTUS calls fake news? And you think about how losing teams have fared the next season, and what does that really mean for the 49ers? Before I get your thoughts on that, I think the 49ers are in a really good spot. Number one, they had their biggest rival as far as getting fans to come to the stadium. The Raiders have left town. They're going to be in Las Vegas. They're going to still hold mini camps in Oakland or Napa for some reason, but they're going to be in Vegas. This happened before when the Raiders went down to Los Angeles. It made the 49ers more popular. So they have, not that it's going to matter if they have more Raider fans joining the 49er nation, but still they're the only show in town. And when you're the only show in town, I think people tend to appreciate you a little bit more. But is the Super Bowl hangover real, or is it fake news, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's been kind of real over the last decade. If you think about it, there's only been 2 teams go back to the Super Bowl, well, really one team go back to the Super Bowl after losing the Super Bowl in this last decade. So that hangover is real. A lot of teams spent a lot of time partying. I mean, you think about the Philadelphia Eagles just a couple years ago, talking about how loose their locker room was and how much fun they were going to have after beating the New England Patriots. Ironically, the New England Patriots ended up back in the Super Bowl, and the Philadelphia Eagles did not.
Well, you know, Coach Belichick believes in staying focused, which I think is what John Lynch was telling his players. Don't worry about the media. The media's not coming to the locker room. They're not at the OTAs. They're not in the huddle. They're not doing anything that we do to get back to where we just left, and that's the Super Bowl. So I really loved hearing his thoughts because normally you don't hear GMs come on and talk about what the team has to do. Oftentimes they leave it up to coaches or players, and sometimes players and coaches can be a bit too emotional. When you go back to the 2010 Colts, the Indianapolis Colts, think about the great Peyton Manning. Missed most of the entire 2011 season. He had an injury, Big C, and the Colts won just 2 games before drafting the great Andrew Luck, first overall pick in the 2012 draft. With all the success that Manning had back in the day, you would have thought that they were always in the playoffs, but that's not the case, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they came off that Super Bowl loss against the New Orleans Saints down in Miami, and the following year, Peyton Manning got injured earlier in the season, and he missed the entire season, which did it in for his career in Indianapolis. But that hangover at that point became real because only 2 victories after being in the Super Bowl, Charlton. That's a hell of a turnaround in the next season.
It really is a heck of a turnaround, and just like, again, hearing Lynch talk today, when he was saying, don't worry about people who are not in this locker room. It's just like a huddle. You got to focus on the guys in the huddle. And when you start having your attention go outside of that huddle, that's when you find yourself sitting on the bench. So I think it was it's a double-edged sword, the message that he gave his players, because like what you always say, that really wasn't around back in the day when the Raiders got beaten by Tampa in that Super Bowl that was down in San Diego. You didn't have players getting on their Instagram and their Twitter account and trying to see who tweeted back in the first 5 or 6 minutes. There are players who get on the Twitter account after a game, before you even finish watching the highlights, Big C. They're tweeting out what happened. We know a lot of players have done that. So I think Lynch had a salient moment, not only with his team, but telling the media too, we don't care what you think. It's about who we have in this locker room. But in essence to that point on Manning, it was 2011, that Steelers team, they were 8-8, I think, facing the 8-8 Broncos in the first round of the playoffs, and the Steelers were defeated in overtime by a guy who can't get a tryout in the last couple of years. That's the great Tim Tebow. I remember he had an 80-yard touchdown pass. I think it was Demaryius Thomas. And even from there, Tebow has been downhill as far as opportunity. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Tebow came along in the NFL about 10 years too early, Charlton. If you think about his ability to play quarterback, the style that he possessed, it would fit in today's modern NFL with the quarterbacks. I mean, his skill set is a lot like Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
When you think about it, as a mobile quarterback who throws the ball second. Tim Tebow would fit fine in the Denver Broncos scheme today, but he was just a decade too early. That great victory in the playoff game, his only playoff game, to that point, against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the team who had lost the Super Bowl the previous season. You thought he might stay around after that, Charlton, but he lost it in the next round, and that was basically it for his career in Denver. Peyton Manning showed up after that.
Yeah, Peyton Manning showed up. But think about this. You just brought up a good salient point. If you look at the quarterbacks now that are getting all the praise, all the headlines, and maybe the next one's going to get $200 million if Lee Steinberg has his way with the great Patrick Mahomes. What is it about Tim Tebow that people did not like? He did throw that 80-yard touchdown pass, and they defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers in that playoff game. And I thought this kid, because he was so dominant at Florida, and remember Chris Leak was at Florida when he came on the scene, and Tebow beat him out. I guess he gave them more of that run pass option, and Leak was more of a drop back, passing quarterback down at Florida, Big C. I know Leak came from Independence High School in Carolina, but when you think about those two teams, Leak, who could not beat out Tebow, those kind of athletes that could not run as well, they got more opportunities. But when Tebow got to the NFL, why did they turn their back on him, Big C? Does it make any sense?
Well, like I said, he was a decade too soon for his playing style and the attributes that he brought to the game, Charlton. He was too dynamic to make a big splash in the NFL at that time, to change the system, the way it was structured. He was a decade too early for his skill set.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Cordell Stewart out of Colorado, a lot like that, with the same skill set. Also, the great Michael Vick. They all played right about the same time, give or take a couple of years, and it's just a matter of time. It's also about who's on your staff. If your staff is looking for a drop-back type of quarterback, they're going to draft offensive linemen that it can stay in the pocket. If they want a running type of quarterback, they want linemen that can move around with that quarterback as well. And I want to even add on to that, is there a Super Bowl hangover, or as POTUS calls it, fake news, Big C? You think about 2012, the 2012 Patriots, they faced the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC Championship game, and the great Joe Flacco had 3 touchdown passes and led them to an improbable 28-13 win, Big C. Your thoughts?
It was, and that was after coming off a tough Super Bowl loss to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl down in Arizona, and the Patriots seem to be on course, Charlton, to get back to the Super Bowl, but the Baltimore Ravens caught a hot streak, and they walked all the way to the next Super Bowl championship.
So when we think about that, is it really as simple as saying Belichick and Brady? Because before Brady came on the scene, Belichick wasn't that successful. I know he was a coordinator with the Giants when the Giants won some Super Bowls under Coach Parcells, but he was still kind of, they put Parcells out there as a genius. When you strip away the onion, I think Belichick really was the genius for those Giants teams that won too, because they won with defense. Does that make sense, or am I foolish, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I think you're playing with fool's gold there, Charlton. A lot of people want to forget about Bill Belichick was a head coach with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
And never had a winning season. Bill Belichick, ironically, never had a winning season until he got Tom Brady as the quarterback.
Yeah.
That propelled his career. So I think Bill Belichick, much of his success has been parallel to what Tom Brady has brought to the plate. I know he had one winning season without Tom Brady where he won 10 games when Matt Castle filled in.
Yeah.
But all of his Super Bowl success has come with Tom Brady at the helm.
That's interesting information, because I know everybody has this idea that the Big Tuna was one of the best coaches ever, and then Bill Belichick comes along and started turning things around too. It's all fair in love and war, and everybody has their own choice. And when you think about the conversation that Lynch had again today with media talking about the 49ers, I think the 2013, the 49ers, their offense scored just 17 points in their 6-point loss to Seattle in the NFC Championship game. And that was a team that was poised to score a lot of points. But every now and then you do get shut down when you lose the Super Bowl and try to come back. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that was the rise of the Seattle Seahawks. If you think about what Seattle did over the next 2 years in the NFC after beating the 49ers, after they came off that heartbreaking loss against the Baltimore Ravens, Charlton, down in the Superdome, where the lights went out and they, potential pass interference that would have gotten them to the 1-yard line with another play. They came up a few points short against Seattle the following year in the NFC Championship.
Isn't that amazing how many good teams they've had in the NFC West, and they've all been to the Super Bowl, from the Seattle Seahawks to the San Francisco 49ers, the Los Angeles Rams, and the Arizona Cardinals. Going back over the last 10 years or so, every one of their teams has actually made it to the Super Bowl. I think that says a lot about what conference actually has the toughest conference to play for. When you think about what happened with the Niners, and then the Seattle went on and did their thing, I look at another great program in 2014. It was a 2014 Denver Broncos. The defense was not good enough to stop the Colts and quarterback Andrew Luck, who led the Colts to an upset win over Denver, and that was in the divisional round of the playoffs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it was after Peyton Manning had taken them to New York, Charlton, and they lost to the Seahawks. But, when you think about what Andrew Luck was doing, he was the rising star in the NFL, and he was the quarterback who had replaced Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. And in his head-to-head matchup at that time, Andrew Luck got the best of the two.
Yeah, Andrew Luck. It's amazing when you think about Andrew Luck stepped down and retired because obviously he wants to be healthier more than just being on a football team. And so as we continue to talk about even what John Lynch talked about today, is there a Super Bowl hangover? Is it real? Or is it like what POTUS says, is it fake news? The 2015 Seattle Seahawks, Big C, I remember how good they were, but they were blasted by the Carolina Panthers in the playoffs, who went 15-1 that year. And during the regular season, the divisional round also lost. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that was Cam Newton's MVP season, Charlton, and he played like an MVP all season long, as well as throughout the playoffs until they got to the Super Bowl. But the Seattle Seahawks, after having that heartbreaking loss against New England down in Arizona in the Super Bowl, seemed to be poised to make a run back for their third.
Yep.
But they ran up on the red-hot Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I remember that team was so dynamic, and everybody kind of hated Cam Newton for giving the footballs to kids. Big C, they said those footballs cost a lot of money. Don't give them out to kids, like Mean Joe Green gave a jersey back in the day in the commercial. But Cam, when you think about Cam, 2016, the Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton, he suffered a down year for his standards, Big C, from MVP to struggling. And the regression of Cam Newton and also the defense contributed largely to the Panthers' 6-10 record in 2016. So how do you go from the mountaintop in the Super Bowl loss to not even going 500 the next year, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that's where the injury started to mount up for Cam Newton. He had shoulder surgery, Charlton, that he came off of that offseason, and also had an ankle injury. But the defense struggled more than what Cam Newton did that year, Charlton, and they fell off to a 6-10 record, didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's amazing. Do you think, just as an observer of football, that Cam, maybe this is a dumb question, but I've asked dumb questions before, because sometimes when you, like Andrew Luck, when he got hurt, he just retired. He said, enough of this stuff. Cam has gone through some surgery. We know he's gone through some rehab. A lot of players go through surgery and rehab, Big C. But maybe Cam I'm not saying he's milking anything, but he knows he's not the same guy that he was before the injuries. It's not like he needs the money, or maybe he does, but who can tell someone how much money they need? Do you think that that's part of the equation? You got all the money you need. If they're going to keep you on the team, why not keep milking it, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's hard to tell a competitor not to compete, and Cam Newton has been a competitor his entire life. He has fought adversity through sports everywhere that he's been. He's been doubted, and he has proven that he is not that person to give up. I think that Cam has pushed himself too hard, but also what we see in Cam Newton is what we will eventually see in Lamar Jackson getting worn down because you run the ball too much.
Yeah.
I think if Cam Newton is put in the right offensive scheme, not sure whether he's going to be in Carolina this upcoming season, but I still see Cam Newton with 3 to 5 good years as an NFL starting quarterback in him.
When you think about what Cam Newton did, and this is a good thought, when you think about his performance in the Super Bowl, I think it was Super Bowl 50 against the Denver Broncos. You think about Jimmy G's performance in Super Bowl 54 down in Miami against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Garoppolo had his injury before he had success, and he got his money before he had success. That's a little bit different. Most guys, they have the injuries after success, and they get their money after success. So how would you equate, say, a Cam Newton and their loss and having a bad season, and how you draw any parallels to Jimmy Garoppolo coming off of a loss in the Super Bowl? Big C, your thoughts?
No, I don't, because all losses in the Super Bowl are unique. And like I said, the writing of Jimmy Garoppolo, when he didn't have the worst Super Bowl performance of all time. You think about Ben Roethlisberger, only 7 of 23 in a Super Bowl,
yeah.
And no one said Ben Roethlisberger should have been benched after that. And the Steelers won the game with Jerome Bettis running the football. So there's been many bad performances in the Super Bowl, a lot worse than what Jimmy Garoppolo did on last Sunday against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
There's been many a quarterback that have played worse. Like I said, Rich Gannon right there in the Bay Area threw 5 interceptions.
Yeah.
And they didn't ostracize him and say he should be outside of the NFL after that.
Not at all. And, remember back in the day, I think there was the New York Giants and the Baltimore Ravens. I believe the Ravens beat the Giants. I think it was 34-7, and I'm down in the Super Bowl. And I believe, I may be wrong, but Trent Dilfer, I think he threw the ball around 12 to 14 times. Did not have the best passing performance. I think they did have a long pass, but he was not a guy that you counted on to win. And we know that he was never really criticized because when you win, they don't look at how bad your performance is, Big C. That make any sense?
Well, Kerry Collins was the opposing quarterback in that Super Bowl for the New York Giants, Dalton. And his career lasted another 8 years after that loss, and he only put up 7 points against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, and no one really criticized Kerry. That's a very good knowledge, Big C. So oftentimes it's just a matter of timing, where you fit in and who you fit in with. And I just like what John Lynch was saying today. Focus on the guys in the huddle. There's a lot of guys outside of the huddle, a lot of guys outside of the locker room, and that includes us too. Everybody has their own opinion. But again, when you're the advocate for the man that you gave him that money, of course you're going to say everything is great. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the Super Bowl hangover. Is it real or is it really fake news, Big C? We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. Also, as I mentioned earlier, launching in the spring of 2020, Big C is launching a real estate TV channel in the spring of 2020. The goal is to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on television. What a way to make your agents the top agent in the country, or at least in your market, by seeing them on TV. Big C, that's so important as we push forward with e-commerce. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, e-commerce is always important, Charlton, and exposure is the number one thing to get people looked at and seen.
Yeah, I one time, I think I saw the best advertisement I've ever seen in my life. This is about 20 years ago. I was at a gym in Northern California, and it said, kill your business in 3 simple steps. It says, don't advertise, don't advertise, don't advertise, and you're sure to kill your business in 3 simple steps. We're going to make sure that real estate brokers can advertise their real estate properties. So going back to the thoughts, is NFL, the Super Bowl hangover, is it real? Or is it like POTUS says, fake news? In fact, the way POTUS was speaking after his own good old boys acquitted him for stuff that they know he did wrong, they wanted to throw Mitt Romney under the bus, but I think Mitt Romney is in a better standing historically than a lot of the other good old boys, Mitch McConnell included. But the 2017, you think about the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, they clinched a wild card berth, but only to score 10 points on the road to the eventual team with the other wings on their helmet, the Philadelphia Eagles. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Falcons came off of that Super Bowl hangover in that shocking loss that they had to the New England Patriots down in Houston, and they seemed poised to make another Super Bowl run, Charlton. But once they got to the playoffs, they could not muster any offense just like they could in overtime against the Patriots.
Yeah, and I want to ask you this thought too, because maybe it's more applicable for college than it is for the NFL, but it seems like these teams that have been to the Super Bowl of late, and I might be wrong, but the New England Patriots in the last 20 years, they have a new stadium. You look at the Atlanta Falcons in the last, 7 or 8 years, they have a new stadium. In fact, in the last 4 years, I think Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You also look at teams like the San Francisco 49ers. They just built Levi Stadium about 4 years ago. Carolina Panthers, that's not a new stadium. Denver's not new, but it's newer than the other one they had, the Mile High Stadium. And so when I think about teams that have been most recently to a Super Bowl, we know Arizona got in there after they built their dome. And then the Steelers, they all have renovated their stadium or built a new one over the last 2 decades, it seems. But what is it about the Falcons and also the Eagles that have these new stadiums? They have great crowd support, but they're more up and down, while New England has stayed consistent. And I think I could say even Pittsburgh has stayed somewhat consistent. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if you look at all those teams that you've named in there, Charlton, realistically, New England's the only team that's been consistent.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh hasn't been back in almost a decade to the Super Bowl since they beat, I'm trying to remember who they beat. I think it was Seattle that they beat in Detroit. That's the last Super Bowl. No, they won in Arizona when they beat the Cardinals. But they haven't been back since then.
But at least playoffs.
And so when you look at teams with new stadiums, Charlton, the reason why teams build new stadiums is for them to get the Super Bowl in that city. It's not making the team better. It's hopefully for economic windfall for the city. When you look at the Falcons Stadium, it's 3 years old. You talked about the one in San Francisco that opened in 2014. So the reason why these stadiums have been built, and even in Arizona, until they passed the Martin Luther King holiday, the Super Bowl had been put on hold there for them to get to the Super Bowl. Carolina Stadium is, 15 years old within itself. But having a new stadium doesn't guarantee you the Super Bowl. The Rams are going to open a stadium next year, as well as the Raiders, supposedly, in 2 different locations. That doesn't guarantee either one of those teams to get to the Super Bowl, because when you look at how tough the NFC West is, 2 of the last participants from the NFC has come from the West. And all of those teams that you've spoken about have been in the Super Bowl in close to the last decade.
It's always fair in love and war. It is nice to see some new digs, but one of the oldest stadiums, Arrowhead Stadium, again, that's been there for many, many moons, and they just crowned themselves as the new NFL champions. But going back to that hangover, is it real? As John Lynch said, it's not real. It's about the people in the locker room, Big C. The 2018 Patriots, they needed overtime to defeat the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium that we just talked about, and that was the AFC title game last season, and to return to the Super Bowl and win their 6th title. But we know with a little bit of help for some blind, what they call it, they turned a blind eye, some of the officials back in that game, Big C, that helped New England get through. But they got through, Big C, your thoughts?
They got through, Charlton, and that was one of the rarities that we've seen in the NFL. A team who has lost the Super Bowl the year before, able to come back after they lost to the Eagles in that great offensive battle that we saw They lost to the Eagles, came back, Charlton, had the fortitude that this organization has had for the last 15 years to overcome adversity and even get into overtime against the hottest offense in the NFL last year, the Kansas City Chiefs, and go on and get their 6th Super Bowl title.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt when you find a way to win. It's always going to be, it's up to the players, and that's one of the things I take away from the great John Lynch. It's about who's in the locker room. 2019 Los Angeles Rams, unlike the 2018 Patriots, the Rams were unable to rebound the year after losing the big game and missed the playoffs. And arguably, you could say one of the worst performances ever in a Super Bowl game, especially with such a high-flying offense. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was a team that was beset by injuries going into the Super Bowl last year throughout the playoffs, Charlton. And you could see that this team was not healthy when the season started. They still were beset with a lot of injuries at the start of the season. They lost some players to free agency because of salary structure.
Yep.
And it took them halfway through the season to catch their stride. At the end of the season, though, the Los Angeles Rams were as hot a team in the AFC West as their top 2 opponents in that division, San Francisco and Seattle.
Yeah.
But they were just too far in the hole to rebound.
Yeah, sometimes you get a little bit too far down and you need someone to help you get up. So a good job by John Lynch, the GM, talking about addressing media in the Bay Area today about what it's going to take to get the 49ers back to the top. And number one, he said, leave the media out of the meetings. So that's obviously something the whole 49ers get to work on. And again, they're the only NFL football team in Northern California, starting the last couple of days, because the Raiders, they already broke ground and named the Raiders the Las Vegas Raiders. So I wish them nothing but the best. I want to get into a different kind of ball, Big C. And this has a smaller huddle, just 5 men in this huddle. I want to get into Big C's NBA power rankings and going 1 through 10. I know there's been a lot of movement on the NBA market today, but I heard D'Angelo Russell said, I'll be wherever my feet land. So that's a new way of saying things. When people were asking him where he's going to be, I know they shipped him over to Minnesota today. But I want to start out with Big C's top 10 NBA power rankings. I'm going to go number 1, the Milwaukee Bucks. They're 43-7. Big C, your assessment of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Well, that's what the smallest market in the NBA will do for you, Charlton, when you concentrate on just basketball and not what the media is saying about you. Everybody in that town loves you. You've been able to deliver on the floor. You have the reigning MVP of the NBA and Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
They're there in Milwaukee, and they have the best record in the league.
They have the best record in the league. It doesn't always mean you're going to win the championship, but they do have a good record. Number 2, the Los Angeles Clippers. They don't have the best record. They are 35-15, and they can turn it on when they feel like it. I think load management is going to help them. Give me your assessment on the LA Clippers led by the great Doc Rivers. Big C, your thoughts.
And they are the best team in the West, and they just got even better today, acquiring 2 key veterans, Charlton, another 20-point scorer to put into that lineup. So they're going to be the kings of L.A. at the end of the season.
They're fighting words for the good old boys in Los Angeles. And I know sometimes you got to stay focused, and distractions sometimes can make people not play at their best. The Lakers have to find a way to stay focused. Number 3, Big C's top 10 NBA power rankings, the Boston Celtics. As the great Johnny Boys used to say, the Boston Celtics, they're 34-15. Give me your thoughts on the good old boys with the Leprechauns, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, this is a team that's improving as the season goes on. You think about some big losses that they had last year at the end of the season when they lost Horford and Irving, and everybody thought it would be a down season. But no, they got more continuity because the young players that had responded so well 2 years ago are now getting a chance to put their skills back on the floor, and they're delivering at the basket every night.
They're delivering at the basket every night. It's about playing with the people in your huddle. I think they're doing that. I want to say the NBA's favorite team so far, for so many reasons, Kobe Bryant being one of them. They're going to have a ceremony, I believe, on Monday, which would be actually February. It's going to be on the 24th, I think, and I think it's going to happen later in the month. But number 4 in Big C's top 10 NBA power rankings, you have the LA Lakers. They're 38-11, but you have them at number 4, Big C. Your thoughts?
I have them at number 4, Charlton, because the critical time in the playoffs is when you need shooters. That's something that the Lakers doesn't possess. They don't possess the outside shooters. And LeBron James has to lead the floor. Who does the ball go through after that, Charlton? I know you got Anthony Davis in the middle, but it's even easy to double up on him when you don't have any outside threats. That's why I make the Clippers the best team in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and many people feel the Clippers, irrespective of record, when it has to count, they may just be the best team in the NBA, but we'll see as time will prove who the better teams are. Also, Big C's NBA power rankings 1 through 10. We're going to come up on number 5. Oh, Canada, the Toronto Raptors, they're 36-14. Big C, why Toronto at that spot? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a team that's coming off a championship, and in the NBA, you don't always have that championship hangover. And you think about what the Raptors have done lately, Charlton. They have won 12 consecutive games to move up the power rankings. So they're really hot in the East right now. They're the second best team in the East.
Well, they are really, and I want to pay them respect, the defending NBA champion Toronto Raptors at 36-14 coming in. Big C's number 5 and Big C's NBA power rankings. I want to get Big C's power rankings 1 through 10. We're going to go to the Mile High city of Denver, Colorado. The Denver Nuggets, them good old boys, are 35-16. Last year they had their best opportunity. They got knocked out by Portland. How are they your number 6 spot, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they were the second best team in the West last year, and they're moving up the slot. Right now they're slotted in the number 3 position. But as this team is getting better as the season goes on, you think about what Nikola Jokic did last night in having 40 points and 20 rebounds and 10 assists. This team is riding his back right now, Charlton, and they're going to be formidable in the West.
Yeah, they're a good team. We'll see if they can climb that mountain again. Big C's NBA power rankings. I want to go to the most beautiful, at least one of the most beautiful spots in the universe, Miami, Florida. Number 7, the Miami Heat. They're 34-15, and they're really trying to make a run. They made a nice move in today's movement with the NBA. Give me your thoughts on why the Miami Heat are number 7, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about where this team has gone from where it was last year, Charlton. Last year, Jimmy Butler started out the season with the Minnesota Timberwolves. He moved on to the Philadelphia Sixers, gave them a deep push into the playoffs. He went as a free agent to Miami, and you've seen the exploits that he's done down there, Charlton. He has them as the third best team in the Eastern Division, Charlton. And Miami's going to move up with the trade they made for Iguodala and a couple other players today. They're only going to get better. Pat Riley knows how to put together a roster, and Eric Spoelstra has championship pedigree as a head coach.
He sure does. Again, Iguodala, I think, is really a big boost to that team. A guy that comes in with championships, knows how to win. Also has really saved his body, decided he didn't want to play someplace, took a lot of ridicule, but all he did was read what Peyton Manning had done when he came into the league. Big C, Eli Manning did the same thing. He chose where he wanted to play, and I really think he's going to help the Miami Heat, especially in the playoffs when he gets you on the floor. He can give you minutes, and he can D up on anybody, Big C, it seems. Number 8 in Big C's NBA top 10 power rankings. I want to go where they play a lot of Jazz, at least back in the day, Big C. Now they're trying to kick Mick Rodney out of the state. The Utah Jazz, 32-17. Give me your thoughts on why they make Big C's top 10.
Well, Charlton, this is a team that's been predicated on defense, and they play out there in no man's land. You don't even know Utah has a team until the highlights come on a sports show.
Yeah.
But this is a team that's solid from the ground up. Quinn Snyder's done a tremendous job at coaching out there, Charlton. He has them under the radar, but they're in the 4th seed in the West.
They are always good. Snyder knows how to coach. They're not a sexy market, Big C, but they know how to stay consistent. Even though they haven't won anything, they're still one of the teams that you know can get an upset or at least win a series. I want to go back to Big C's top 10 NBA power rankings. Number 9, them good old boys down in Houston, they have liftoff. They're 32-8, and I know Harden can shoot. He can probably shoot from the moon, Big C, but they're going small ball now. How do they make Big C's top 10? Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that's just clean house, Charlton, of all their big men. So they're looking to play in the 6'3" and under league in the NBA. But this is a team that's loaded with scorers. When you think about Houston, they have 3-4 guys on their roster that can get you 20-plus points every night. So this is a team that's looking to run with the basketball. They've gone deep into the playoffs the past several years. Mike D'Antoni will find a way to get it done.
He's going to have to find a way to get it done because getting rid of Capella, I know they struggle lately, but when you need a big guy to match up in the playoffs, they don't have that guy now. And we'll just see how that turns out. I'm sure they're going to make it a big run this year. Also want to stay down in the heart of Texas. Big C, where can you get a big state? In fact, everything's big in Texas. I know you've been through Texas quite a bit, driving through like Smokey and the Bandit, Big C. where can you get a good steak? Is it Houston or Dallas? The Dallas Mavericks are 31-19. They come in at Big C's number 10 on Big C's NBA top 10s. But who has the better steak, Houston or Dallas, Big C? Your thoughts?
Hey, Charlton, everything is bigger in Texas, and there's cows to cover the whole state, regardless of which city you want to eat in. But when you look at the Dallas Mavericks, Charlton, this is a young team that's coming together. It's led by Nick Porzingis and Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is the best young star right now in the NBA. He has lived up to billing as advertised. He is delivering on the double-doubles, the triple-doubles, all of that, Charlton. And so the Dallas Mavericks are not sneaking up on anybody. They've gotten healthy in a hurry.
Yeah, they've gotten healthy in a hurry. And Luka's really turned out to be very fantastic. He could have been the number one pick up here by the Sacramento Kings in Northern California, but they chose to go with Bagley, and it's all fair in love and war. I want to also throw in, just because I believe they're right there, the Indiana Pacers. They're also 31-19, identical records with the Dallas Mavericks. How do they make Big C's top 10 NBA power rankings, Big C? Your thoughts?
This is a team that has a bona fide leader in Donovan Mitchell, who came back off that horrific leg injury that he had last year, Charlton. He has rebounded and showed no ill effects from that. And that's what inspires your teammates, is that you're willing to come back after an injury such as that and be competitive, and Donovan Mitchell has the Indiana Pacers competitive.
Yeah, definitely has a competitive. There's so much that's great about NBA basketball, especially with all the movement that's happened today. And I know everybody's going to have to adjust to new teammates, but it's always great when you're making that run before the All-Star break and then trying to get positioned for the playoffs. Tonight's NBA schedule is not a big one. You have the Orlando Magic at the New York Knicks. You have the Philadelphia 76ers at the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks. The New Orleans Pelicans at the Chicago Bulls. The beautiful city of San Antonio. You love the Riverwalk down there. The San Antonio Spurs are at the Portland Trail Blazers. The Houston Rockets are at the LA Lakers. Is must-see basketball for the city of Los Angeles tonight. I know NBA basketball has so much to just pay respect to, not just the game, but how they cherish their brethren. I know sports is very competitive, Big C, and you know, Kobe Bryant aside, I just see so many NBA players, whether it's about social justice, reform, or if it's about embracing new brethren that go from one team to the next. You don't really find that outside of basketball and baseball, where players are traded right before, you know, the midway mark of the season. But I just like the way the NBA has been so classy. It's predominantly run by African Americans, and I really love the way basketball is shaping up. So who do you think, based on what you've seen so far, has really made the biggest splash, if that makes sense, with all the trades that have happened, Big C? Your thoughts?
I think the Los Angeles Clippers have made the biggest splash when they brought in Morris out of the New York Knicks. They brought in a 20-point scorer to add to that dominant lineup that they have there in Los Angeles. The Lakers didn't make any moves, Charlton. The Golden State Warriors set themselves up for next year, bringing in the former #1 overall pick in Wiggins, and now he can be the he can be the third or fourth guy when you look at scoring in Golden State. It all won't be on his shoulders anymore like it was in Minnesota. But I think of everybody who made trades, and I think that the Los Angeles Clippers improved their team more than any team in the NBA during this trade deadline.
You know, and what I love about NBA is it has so much that we can learn from. We always talk about, can someone get a job, or even a job interview. And I want to talk about a little bit of race and ethnicity in the NBA. When you think about it, it was the great Bill Russell in 1966. He became the first non-white and African-American head coach in the NBA. In the late 1980s, teams began hiring more African-American coaches in large numbers. And at the start of the 2015-2016 season, there were 7 black head coaches in the league. It was, down 50% from the 3 previous years, Big C, but the fewest in 16 years. So at the conclusion of 2016-17 season, there were 8 African-American head coaches. I know things are changing. When you look at ownership in NBA, Robert Johnson, as part of the ownership of the Charlotte Bobcats at that time, now the Charlotte Hornets, was the first black majority team owner in the NBA, 2004-2005 season. And he was succeeded as the Bobcats owner in 2010 and 11 by none other than the great Michael Jordan. You look at the Sacramento Kings, Vivek Ranadive, and is the owner of an NBA team. Do you feel that all this push that we have in growth and expansion that we spend maybe too much time on talking about what players are going to play where and less on ownership. I believe that the NBA is a league that promotes ownership over any other league when it comes to minorities, Big C. That make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at baseball has always been in that position trying to have inclusion, Charlton. And I really would find it hard to believe that the NBA is promoting minority ownership. I mean, it's what the financial pocket will bear when you think of that. And how many guys have the opportunity to have that type of money in America and still wanting to own a sports team?
Yeah.
And every league, regardless whether the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, you have to be voted on by the board of governors. You have to be vetted. It's not about saying, I got $10 billion and I want a team. You have to be vetted.
Yeah.
And when you also think about it, Charlton, there is a team in the NBA that doesn't even play, that the owners let stay on the slate. That's the Spirit of St. Louis.
Yeah.
They have a team. They've had a team since the early 70s when the ABA and the NBA merged. So the ownership is there. It's just a very exclusive club of billionaires that you're just not going to find in everyday walk of life.
Yeah, that's very true. And so with all the talk about players, breaking the bank and where they get $100 million contracts or $200 million contracts, the money in the NBA and how the NBA makes their money, and you talk about needing billionaires to buy teams, it comes from television rights, it comes from merchandising, and ticket sales. That's the primary three sources of revenue. But TV advertising, as we talk about doing the Big C real estate TV advertising pays for the bulk of these contracts for these billionaire owner teams and also these multi-million-dollar players. So that's where the money is made. It's about having access to TV, merchandising, and ticket sales. And I think the NBA does a great job in marketing. Another thing I love about the NBA is an international approach to working. The league broadcasts to every populated continent in the universe. They also think about this, Big C. They broadcast from Poland to Mongolia. Also in the 1970s, rosters were almost uniformly African-American. Today, a quarter of the active players are from outside of the United States, coming from 37 different countries, Big C. That is growth, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that is why the NBA is able to market worldwide, because there are countries that have players that are stationed here in the United States to draw interest back from their home countries, Charlton, and it allows the marketing of NBA merchandise and memorability in those countries. And this is why the NBA is a global game, but the NBA will not expand outside this North American continent that it's on.
Yeah, and so I'm really proud to see the growth of what's happened with the world of NBA. I wanna get on to a little bit of some college basketball. I'm going to go with some women's rankings in the top 10 in college basketball. And to me, I love the growth and the fact that we're having it in boys and girls sports, or men's and women's sports has always been pretty phenomenal to me. So I'm going to go down the women's side, Big C, and then I'll get your thoughts on the men's side. But we'll cover the women first, and then we'll come back to you and get your thoughts on the men, just some of the top 10 teams in the country, how they're playing. In Big C's top 10 women's college basketball, number 1, Baylor University, they're 19-1 on the season. Number 2, South Carolina, they are 21-1. Followed by number 3, the Oregon Ducks, they are 20-2 with a big win that just happened over the UConn Huskies back on the East Coast. Number 4, Louisville Cardinal, they're 21-1, Big C. Number 5, the Stanford Cardinal, they are 20-2. Followed by number 6, UConn was just lost at home for the first time in many, many moons to Oregon. UConn's 19-2. Number 7, North Carolina State, they're 21-1. Followed by number 8, Mississippi State, they're 20-3. Number 9, Oregon State is 18-4. Followed by the great UCLA, fight. The Bruins are 19-2. And Big C, the state of college women's basketball, give me your thoughts.
I think it's solid, Charlton. When we think about how women's college basketball has been over the past decade or so, it's been in the Southeast and in the South, Charlton. So when you think about the top 2 teams in the country, Baylor Lady Bears down in Waco, Texas, and South Carolina Gamecocks, led by Don Staley out there, Charlton, who have been a perennial power in the country for the past decade under her leadership. and former, NCAA championships. Both of those teams have won championships in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
The state of women's college basketball is strong, and when you attend some of the arenas down in the South, Southeast, and even in the southern part of the United States, Charlton, you see packed houses. You see arenas with 14, 15,000 people in, cheering these ladies on playing basketball.
It's amazing. We talk so much about football and where recruits go. You notice in the top 10, the Pac-12 have 4 women teams in college basketball's top 10. I just want to ask you, how does the Pac-12 have better basketball programs for the women programs than a program like the SEC with all their schools? I think they have 16 schools in the SEC. And you look at that versus football, why is Pac-12 able to recruit better women's sports programs than the SEC maybe doing more on the football side? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, both of them have 4 teams in the top 25 when you look at the SEC and the Pac-12. So there's an equal distribution there. But when you come down to tournament time, Charlton, the SEC is dominated during the NCAA tournament more than the Pac-12 has on the West Coast.
Yeah, well, I love the fact that we pay homage to our women's teams also. And I want to just get your thoughts if you have the top 10 men's programs that you'd like to pay homage to on Big C Sports. Big C, go right ahead, sir.
Oh, yeah, Charlton. I mean, when you think about men's college basketball, which has been the staple, and we talked about March Madness is just, a little less than 6 weeks away.
Yep.
You can still stay down there in Waco, Texas. You think about the University of Baylor having the top ladies team in the country and the top men's team in the country.
Wow.
The Baylor Bears are 20-1 on the regular season. Then you come out there to the West Coast. We talked about that small market out there in Spokane, Washington.
Yep.
The Gonzaga Bulldogs that are 23-1 on the season. Then we got to go to the home of Dorothy out there in Kansas. Where always they're fun to see great players to come out there to the wasteland where they're 19-3, ranked number 3 in the country.
Yeah.
And we're going to stay on the West Coast once again. San Diego State. This is a team out there in the Mountain West, Charlton, that has shocked everybody this year. They're the last unbeaten in the country at 23-0. We go back down in the South to Louisville, Kentucky, Charlton, where the Cardinals are playing strong basketball. And their ladies program is solid also at number 4. The men's come in at number 5 at 20-3 on the season.
Yep.
Then we go to Dayton, Ohio. And when you look at the Dayton Flyers, Charlton, they're rising up the polls on everyone this year and sure to be a top seed team in March Madness at 20-2 on the season.
Yep.
You got to always go to Tobacco Road where you'll always find a dominant team in men's college basketball, the Duke Blue Devils, who have a big rival game this Saturday against the North Carolina Tar Heels. They come in at number 7, ranked 19-3 in the country. Florida State, not just the football team, plays down there in the state.
Yeah.
The Seminoles basketball in the ACC are on the heels of the Duke Blue Devils with a 19-3 season. Number 9, the Maryland Terrapins. Once again, we're looking at the animals out there, Charlton, up there in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Maryland is the best team in the conference this year right now, supporting an 18-4 record. We round out the top 10 with the University of Villanova Wildcats and Coach Jay Wright, who wears those $3,000 suits on the sideline, coming in at 17-5.
Yeah. You don't gotta tell the price tag. I thought those were donated suits, Big C. I'm sure somebody is donating money. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Launching in spring of 2020, Big C Sports TV Real Estate. Some Big C Real Estate getting some brokers all over the country to list their properties on our real estate channel, launching in spring of 2020. Big C, I love what John Lynch said today when approached by a media. How are you going to keep the 49ers from having that Super Bowl hangover? And he said, we're not focused on the guys who are not in the locker room. We're focused on the guys in our locker room. I think that's very salient advice. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's what sports has always been about. It's been about the men on the roster The media is always earning a living by talking about what should and should not be done. They're with you when you're winning. They hate you when you're losing.
Yep.
And John Lynch is the guy who put that roster together.
He put that roster together, so he has to take some advice from some of the great motivators in the universe. Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, in the sports universe, I'm looking at this day in black history. In 1867, on this day, the Peabody Fund for Black Education in the South was created to help the advancement of colored people after slavery in education in the South.
And that is very excellent news. People can just Google it. You can Google it too. Every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. You can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to deal with that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.